Chapter 2, Part 2. Let me turn this a little bit. All right. I think he'd know it was on his foot all right, Grandpa said, but once he gets in it, I don't think there's much he can do about it. After the jaws of the trap had been wrapped, Grandpa unwound the wire from the spring and released it. Holding the trap in his hands and inspecting his work, he grunted and said, "Looks like a pretty good job to me. What do you think about it?" "Looks all right to me, Grandpa," I said. "I don't see how it could ever hurt a monkey's foot." Laying the trap down on the floor, Grandpa mashed the spring down with his foot and set the trigger. Stepping back, he stood for several seconds looking at it. Then he grinned and said, "Just to be sure that it won't hurt a monkey's paw, I think it should be tested out, don't you?" "Test it out?" I said. "How are we going to do that, Grandpa?" With a twinkle in his eyes and a silly little grin on his face, Grandpa said, "The only way I can think of is for you to poke your finger in it." I didn't even answer Grandpa. I didn't have to. My action spoke for me. Closing both hands, I put them behind me and stepped back. Grandpa grunted and said, "What's the matter? Don't you think I know what I'm doing?" "Sure, Grandpa," I said. "I think you know what you're doing all right. But I had my finger in a trap once, and believe me, it hurt. Why couldn't we just poke a stick in it?" "No," Grandpa said, eyeing the trap and rubbing his nose. "It wouldn't do any good to poke a stick in it. We wouldn't know any more than we do now." For several seconds, we just stood there in silence, looking at the trap. Rowdy knew that something was going on and got curious. He eased over and took a look at the trap himself. One look was all he wanted. He started backing up like a crawdad, then sticking his tail between his legs, he disappeared behind some boxes. I couldn't help smiling at old Rowdy's actions. He had gotten his paw in a trap once and had never forgotten it. Grandpa broke the silence by saying, "Well, we're not getting anywhere just standing here. It still has to be tested out. Now I'm going to poke my finger in it, but if that thing hurts, you might have to help me get it off my finger. Do you understand?" I nodded my head to let him know that I understood, but I didn't like it at all. "Well, here goes," Grandpa said. Closing both eyes, he reached over and tripped the trigger with his finger. The trap snapped and Grandpa jumped. I closed both eyes and gritted my teeth. I didn't open my eyes again until I heard Grandpa chuckling. "That's just about the best monkey catching trap I've ever seen," he said. "It didn't hurt a bit. I hardly felt it." All excited, I helped Grandpa get the trap off his finger. Then, working together, he wrapped the jaws of the other 5 traps. Handing the traps to me, Grandpa said, "Well, it looks like you're in the monkey catching business. Let me know how you come out." I told him I would, and I thanked him with all my heart for helping me. Calling to Rowdy, I started for home. Just as I reached the door, Grandpa said, "Hey, are you sure your mother didn't want something from the store?" My heart almost stopped beating. Digging Mama's list from my pocket, I said, "Boy, Grandpa, I sure am glad you reminded me. If I had gone home without the things Mama wanted, she'd have had made me wear a girl's bonnet for a week. That's what she usually does when I forget something." Taking the list, Grandpa smiled and said, "Well, that's what grandpas are for, isn't it? Look out for boys." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. My old grandpa knew how I felt about it. While Grandpa was putting the things Mama wanted into a gunny sack, I thought of something. "Grandpa," I asked, "where am I going to set my traps?" "I believe I'd go right back to where you saw the monkey," he said. "If they're not in that bur oak tree, they're around there somewhere. Rowdy will find them." On hearing Grandpa say his name, Rowdy whined and his tail started fanning the air. Grandpa looked at him, grinned, and said, "Say that again, partner. I didn't understand you. You want something?" Grandpa really told Gram Rowdy really told Grandpa that he wanted something. His deep voice made the tin cans dance on the shelves. So this is where I'm gonna give you your answer to a question that's gonna be on your set of questions for Chapter 2, Part 2. And it is that Rowdy said that he would like some spam, some delicious spam. SPAM. That's what Rowdy said. Spam. That's your answer for that. Back to the book. Grandpa grunted and walked to the rear of the store. When he came back, he had a meat rind in his hand. Handing it to Rowdy, he smiled and said, "Here you are, old fella. That'll be one monkey you owe me." Rowdy pranced out of the store, looking as proud as he did when he had treed a possum. "Grandpa," I asked, "do you think I should use bait when I set my traps?" "Bait?" Grandpa said. "No, I hadn't thought of that. Yes, I believe I would." "I don't know what monkeys like to eat," I said. "What kind of bait would you use?" "Well, let's see," Grandpa said. "I'm not much of an authority on monkeys, but I think I've read where they'll eat most anything. Do you have any apples?" "We have a whole barrel of apples," I said. "Papa got them from an Arkansas peddler." "Fine," Grandpa said. "Just set your traps in the dirt at the foot of the tree and hang an apple above each one. I think that'll do the job." Just before Grandpa handed me Mama's groceries, I saw him slip something into the sack. I let on like I hadn't seen this because I knew what it was. It was a sack of candy for Daisy and me, and was one item that would never find its way to Papa's bill. Here you are, Grandpa said, handing me the groceries. Next time you're up this way, I hope to see a sack full of monkeys. Putting my traps in the gunny sack, I said, You will, Grandpa, and one of them will be that $100 monkey. He's the Jasper I want to catch. End of chapter 2, part 2.